Okay, we're back. All right, we're back. We're diving straight into the how-to of Koetting's method, specifically this technique for summoning what he calls a wandering spirit. It's fascinating because he's moving from the heavy architectural stuff, the altars, the blades, into something much more, well, voyeuristic.
Voyeuristic is one word for it. He's basically telling you to haunt your own living room.
Hey, if a spirit wants to hang out, let him. I mean, I'm dialing in from home today, and honestly, the idea of just observing a spirit without actually demanding it do any work, that sounds a lot less stressful than my last tarot reading.
Well, look at the setup he prescribes, guys. It's so specific. He says you need an altar facing west, 2 white candles less than an inch from the edge. It's almost domestic. Like, here is your sacred temple. Please don't spill your tea on it.
Exactly. And notice the distinction he makes right at the start. He says he's not summoning something in front of us, but just nearby. There's a huge difference in the mechanics there. He's not building a bridge for a heavy entity. He's just calling a neighbor to the fence.
But the fence is a state of mind. He tells you to use peripheral vision. Don't look at the flame, look at the aura of the flame. It's all about tricking the brain into dropping its guard.
That's the deactivating the brain claim from earlier, right? The part where he says the brain is the enemy.
Right. He wants you to bypass the analytical mind entirely. He literally says, do not look at the flame itself. Let your peripheral vision notice the light, the contact of the light crowns. He's trying to induce a sensory overload where the logic center just quits.
It sounds beautiful, but also kind of terrifying. He says you should feel this explosion of energy in your throat, ready to burst from your lips. Spirits, hear my voice. Spirits, come to me. It's so much pressure to be authoritative.
And then he hits you with the warning. Do not allow even the slightest seed of fear to arise. Good luck with that, Koetting. If I feel a presence in the dark, my heart is going to hammer.
Yeah, and he even acknowledges it. He says, calm your heart, as it will surely begin to beat heavily when the gaze of wandering spirits falls upon you. He's basically saying, expect to be terrified, but just pretend you're in charge.
This is where it gets wild. He claims that if you ask a question like, how tall is this spirit, your mind will give you an instant answer. But if you have to search for the answer, it's a lie.
That is such a massive, dangerous claim. If you have to look for it, it isn't true. That's a recipe for just talking to your own hallucination.
But wait, look at the mechanics he provides. He says the answer comes through the third eye via an indigo light. He's saying perceive the vibration rather than just imagine it.
But then he admits the brain might freak out. He says you might feel dizzy or like you're falling through the floor. He calls it spatial disorientation. It's like he's describing a full-on dissociative episode.
It's interesting because this ties back to his earlier claim that the ritual circle isn't a wall, but a centrifuge. He's trying to spin your consciousness so fast that the real world and the spirit world blur.
And he tells you not to close your eyes when you feel that vertigo. He says closing your eyes is a trick by your illusion-ridden brain to prevent you from seeing reality.
Ugh, man, he really hates the brain, doesn't he? The brain is a liar. The brain is a barrier. The brain is a demon.
He's certainly not a fan of the analytical faculty. But look at the end of this passage. He says the real test is asking, what does the face of the spirit look like? He says, for reasons unknown even to him or his spiritual colleagues, that this specific question requires extreme devotion and can end the session.
Because you've finally pushed too far? You've moved from observing a neighbor to staring into the abyss?
Or because once you see the face, you can't unsee it. The subjective synthesis he talked about earlier becomes too real. You're trapped in its image. In a room with a spirit.
I think I'll stick to the Munchkin games for tonight. At least when a dragon attacks, I know it's just plastic.
Okay, let's pick up right where that tension was building. He's talking about the moment the image of the face breaks. He says sometimes it hits you like a flash, and it might be, well, threatening or ugly.
And there it is, the moment you lose control of your emotions.
Exactly, but then he gives this weirdly specific instruction. He says if the face looks pleasant, the moment you try to analyze it, your brain kills the whole process. It becomes an enemy to your magic.
It's that same cycle, isn't it? The second you try to turn it into a thing to be studied, the magic evaporates.
Right, so he says, avoid attention to details, just perceive the image as a whole. He wants you to treat the spirit's body as something ephemeral, something that doesn't even fit into our expectations of reality.
He's basically saying, stop being a scientist for 5 minutes and just see.
Yeah, but look at what he does next. He tells you to take that image you perceived and project it back onto the spirit out into the real world.
Wait, what? You don't just look at it, you have to throw the image back out?
Yeah, he says you have to move your focus away from yourself. He says if you focus on the image, the focus is actually shifted from the spirit back to you, to your distorted imagination and egotistical pride.
There's that ego talk again. He's obsessed with the idea that our very perception is a selfish act.
But he claims if you move the focus back to where you first found the spirit, you can move past just knowing it's there to actually seeing it standing before you. And here's the wild part. He says the spirit will actually freeze in time and space just so you can examine it.
Like a photograph?
Exactly. He says time and space aren't fixed phenomena here. They're just creations of the mind that are sometimes useful and sometimes just in the way.
Man, I wish my brain worked like that when I'm stuck in traffic. Just freeze the car so I can look at the...
But he's not talking about traffic, Paco. He's saying the spirit is real, and the image you're seeing isn't just a hallucination in your head, but exists in the outer world.
But then he gets into the actual communication. He says you can ask anything. What is the spirit wearing? And the image just appears.
But there's a heavy way to end the exercise. He says we have enough power in your chest, let it burst out and command. Spirit, what can you say to me?
And then comes the part that sounds like a migraine.
He says at first, the voice might sound distorted, meaningless. He says you'll feel this pressure building around your head, especially around your ears.
That sounds so visceral, like your brain is literally being squeezed by the sound.
He says the words will hang in the air around you. And he gives this incredibly specific tip. You have to relax your neck, your forehead, your eyes, your brows, basically your whole face. So you can ask yourself, what did the spirit say?
I can already feel my forehead tightening just listening to this.
It's the delay that gets me. He says the hardest part is hearing the voice in real time. He says often the spirit's lips move, and only seconds later, the word hits your mind.
But then, and this is the pro tip, he says, as you get better, the reverse happens. The words hit your consciousness first, and then the lips move.
That's a massive claim. He's saying the latency of your own perception is the only thing separating you from the real experience.
And he ends this section with what he calls field testing. He says, don't do this in a chair you brought with you. He says we have to go into the wild, sit on hard earth or a stone, and repeat the whole thing.
Because if you can do it when you're uncomfortable, in the dirt, then you've actually mastered the mechanics.
So, basically, if you want to talk to ghosts, you need to go camping and sit on a rock. Got it.
But wait, there's a massive pivot here. He shifts from the how-to to a critique of Ulcer books. He says most authors of grimoires try to make things as confusing as possible.
Because confusion sells books. Complexity looks like death to a beginner.
He agrees. He says they trap themselves in stereotypes of good and evil, logic and absurdity. He claims that evocation is actually strikingly simple if you follow the basic principles.
See? This is exactly what I told you about my Munchkin tactics. It's not chaos, it's just efficient.
But look at his sting here. He says neophytes fail because they enter the temple expecting failure. He says when people tell him I tried evocation and it failed, his first question is always, why?
And I bet the answer is because I didn't see a guy in a cape appear in my kitchen.
Exactly. He says the spirit might have been there, just waiting for the practitioner to materialize them. He says the spirits, demons, and angels exist independently of us. They respond to the elementary principles, even if you stop reading the incantation halfway through because you're too disappointed.
That is such a heavy burden for a practitioner. To think that the failure isn't the magic, but your own lack of... stamina?
He calls it a lack of persistence and confidence. He even claims that when people call an evocation a failure, they often experience supernatural coincidences shortly after.
You mean like, the demon doesn't show up in the triangle, but it shows up in your bank account or your marriage?
Exactly. He says they find other ways to affect the lives of those who called them, often forcing the person to run to him for quick salvation.
So, if you mess up the ritual, the demon doesn't go away. It just switches from visual hallucination to life-ruining nightmare.
He basically says the only way to stop the chaos is to be certain of the success from the very moment you decide to perform the evocation. We're moving into a very practical, almost housekeeping phase of the book now. He's finishing up that thought on the wandering spirits. He says you can enough never leave a ritual unfinished. If you don't see the spirit, don't just quit. Reconsecrate the sigil, refocus, and try again.
That sounds incredibly exhausting. Imagine being halfway through a summoning. You're sweating, your heart is pounding, and you're just like, well, I guess I'll just do a do-over.
I mean, if the demon is already half materialized, leading him there sounds like a terrible idea. like leaving a half-cooked steak on the counter. It's just going to go bad and haunt your fridge.
Exactly. He says if you don't see them, you have to refocus your will. But then he pivots to what he calls the subtle science, the preparation of the temple. And he's very strict about the timing. You start no earlier than 12 and no later than an hour before the start.
It's all about that intentionality, right? Creating a sacred window of time.
Yeah, but look at his take on the temple itself. He says if it's indoors, clean it. If it's outdoors, clear the trash and stones. But then he shares this anecdote. He tells this story about a very friend of his who cleans her house perfectly for her parents. But when it's time for a ritual, she just sweeps everything on the floor to the side to make room for the triangle.
Honestly, relatable. Why bother with a vacuum when you have a Koetting king coming? Just move the laundry piles.
Hey, as long as the king doesn't trip over a rogue sock, I'm fine with it.
But it leads into the actual geometry. This is where the architect part of our theme really hits. He's prescribing a specific layout, a mandala at least a meter in diameter, and an isosceles triangle outside the circle with its apex touching the boundary.
And it's not random placement. Healy links the triangle's position to the cardinal directions. North for earth, east for air. He even gives a whole chart for which direction corresponds to which element and which planetary sphere.
It's very Solomonic, very structured. It's that mechanics of command we were talking about. You're just asking a spirit to show up. You're building a specific direction-y trap.
And he ties it to the spirits themselves. Archangels like Raphael or Michael have their specific sides. He even says if you want to call elemental spirits, you have to stand facing the direction of their element.
Wait, look at what he says about the incense. This is the part that always gets me. He says, do not succumb to the temptation of buying those tiny charcoal tablets from the local occult shop.
Oh boy, here we go.
He says they're too small, they burn too fast, and they don't provide enough heat to burn the necessary amount of incense. He's basically calling out every beginner's kit on the market.
He's being a bit of a snob here, but he has a very point. He says the incense isn't for the smell, it's for the smoke. He offers two theories for why the smoke matters. 1, it provides a thick, pliable substance for the spirit to form a body. 2, it causes a type of asphyxiation that triggers an endorphin and dopamine release in a practitioner, causing hallucinations.
So it's either magical medium or intentional oxygen deprivation. Either way, it's pretty intense.
And then he gets really dark. He mentions that in extreme and demonic versions of evocation, warmed vessels of fresh blood are used. He says it's often more successful than just smoke.
Okay, that is definitely not low energy vibes.
I mean, I'm all for a good steak, but fresh blood in the triangle? That's a bit much for a Tuesday night, isn't it?
He doesn't even try to debunk it. He just asks if theories of the practitioners, whether it's ectoplasm or the psychological terror of seeing blood, actually matter if the result is the same. He's very much in that results-oriented mindset we discussed earlier.
It's that subjective synthesis again. If the ritual makes you believe it's happening, then for you, it is happening.
Right. But then he gets back to the practical tools. He says the brazier's function is actually more physical than spiritual. It's just there so you don't burn the temple down. And he warns, make sure you have enough incense, otherwise they might run out when the demon is halfway materialized.
Imagine the disappointment. The demon is halfway there, the smoke clears, and you're just standing there with a burnt piece of sandalwood.
He goes through the list, sandalwood for elementals, frankincense for Raphael, and then dragon's blood for the lower Goetek spirits. He even suggests burning dried human hair for truly demonic entities.
Okay, I think I've had enough extreme for one episode.
Same. Let's get back to the altar setup. He says the altar must be in the exact center of the circle. 2 candles, either black or white. No multicolored ones because they're too distracting.
He's very focused on minimizing distractions to keep that subjectly synthesis intact. The bowl for the liquid wine, honey, or blood goes on the left. The ritual dagger, the athame, goes on the right, pointing toward the triangle. And you even need a notebook to record everything.
It's so much work. It's a full-scale production, more than just a meditation.
And the very last thing he mentions for the setup, the sigil. It goes on the altar last, face down on a square of paper.
So, you build the space, you prepare the tools, you set the directions, you prep the smoke, and finally, you lay down the address for the entity. It's like setting the stage before the actor even arrives. I think my brain needs a minute to process all that stagecraft.
Agreed. Let's take a quick breather and grab some water.